Hey, welcome everybody out there in computer land or whatever you're watching on your phone or your computer. That's it, computer land. This is the Pen Parentis Literary Salon, so you are in the right place. And I just made the gesture for you're in the wrong place, so you know it's going to be one of those nights. This is the November Pen Parentis Literary Salon. The subject is the haves and have-nots. And I'm MM DeVoe. I am the founder of Pen Parentis and a writer and a mom. And then this over here is Christina Chiu right here. She's my partner and she's the curator of the Salon series. And while we are waiting for a few seconds for people to gather, it would be really cool if you would drop your name and where you're from in the comments so that we can make sure that that part's working and so that we can tell who's watching, because we know that you're watching. We just don't know who you are. We can hear you on the comments, or not hear you, but we can read your comments. During the production, we can see what you're saying and we can chat with you. So if you want to say hi, we will say hi right back. While we're waiting, I also want to thank Dawn, Susanna, Hardy, Virginia, Brianna, and Jane for your financial support. We super appreciate it. It is very, very kind of you to add an extra tax-deductible donation when you were getting your tickets tonight. So yay. I can tell you that Pen Parentis is a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to help writers stay on creative track after they have a family. So all the writers that you see tonight do have kids, although you may be surprised because you may have a stereotype for what a parent writer is, but you will find out that they are pretty amazing and they write a vast diversity of creative things. Christina, let's talk to you. Hi. Oh, look at everyone. These people. You see these people? Las Vegas, Ontario, Florida, fancy people. Hi, you guys. Look, Hardy's already thanking us and we haven't even started. We've done nothing but babble. Oh, we love this. Okay. Christina.
Hello, everyone. Today we have a salon that is focusing on the haves and have-nots, and I'm sure each of these authors will bring their interpretation of that. And we have three really amazing authors. First, we have Amy Shearn. She's the author of the critically acclaimed novels How Far is the Ocean from Here, The Mermaid of Brooklyn, and Unseen City. We have Josen Barello. He's the author of Spindle City, which I'm really excited about. Sara Schaff, finally, is the author of the story collections The Invention of Love and Say Something Nice About Me. Everyone, please welcome our authors.
Yay! We are really, really excited to have this amazing panel of authors. We have had Amy Shearn before, so she has to carry all the conversation. We are also really excited that you cannot imagine this like lengthy amount of people commenting. So it's going to be really great during the Q&A. We will be able to actually answer people's questions because it sounds like they're a little active out there today. Awesome. So what I do want to tell you, though, is that before we get started with the readings and the Q&A that you're used to, today is a special day because we are presenting our Pen Parentis Fellow today. The Pen Parentis Writing Fellowship for New Parents is an annual merit-based award that Pen Parentis presents to a writer who has a child under 10. This winner receives a check for $1,000, as well as publication in Dreamers Creative Writing, which is a Canadian magazine that publishes the winning story both online and in their lovely full-color print magazine. We also offer that person a year of title membership, which includes our famous accountability meetups. We also cover your registration for AWP and offer a full year of mentorship. And of course, you get to do this reading. You get to meet and mingle with writers of the caliber of our guests tonight, Amy Shearn, Jotham Barello, and Sara Schaff. That is its own reward. The winner is chosen from blind submissions based only on the talent shown in the writing piece. This year, the winner's circle for 2021 are third place winner, Laura Henneman, whose story Half-Life will be published in Dreamers magazine in January 2022. Second place went to Melissa Bowers, whose story Hive Mind is due to come out in a longer format, and we will tell you when and where as soon as we are allowed. And now it is my absolute pleasure to present to you our newest writing fellow, Kelly Shellacky Clark. I messed that up. Kelly.
No, you had it.
No,
You got it right.
I got it right.
You did perfect.
Kelly Shellacky Clark is a Seattle-based fiction and creative nonfiction writer, an adjunct English instructor, a corporate communications specialist, and an arts journalist, and a mom with deep Los Angeles roots. She earned her MFA in creative writing from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, but left the desert in favor of the rainy Pacific Northwest, where she lives now with her husband and her daughter. As is now a tradition, Dawn Ryan, the fellow for 2020 to 2021, wrote a captivating welcome to our newest fellow, and she read it aloud in a very intimate Zoom. And I am going to read to you the very core of this letter. This is an extremely abbreviated excerpt of a truly magnificent and lovely welcome letter. The full glorious text is living on our homepage at penparentis.org, and I really... You must stop over and see it. Here is a very, very short version of the letter. Dear Kelly, it brings me tremendous joy to welcome you to the Pen Parentis Fiction Writers Fellowship. I'd like to assure you of your place in this world. You were a writer before the baby, and you are a writer still. Let there be no doubt about who you are and why you are here. Kelly, you did not burst from the center of a star, spiral down the double helix of your foremother's mitochondrial DNA to show up here and not write. You, my sister, are a writer. Please enjoy this year and all that it offers. Kudos to you and congratulations. With love and pride, Dawn Ryan. You must all go to the link on our homepage, which you will recognize by the photo of the tiara, and read all of this absolutely amazing letter, because it will make you cry. It's so good. And now we get to hear Kelly Shellacky Clark read her winning story, Dear Barbie Arm, on the corner of 5th and Market. Yay!
I'm so happy to hear that I can go and read Dawn's letter again in its entirety, because it really was amazing and just so much about what you guys are doing. And I want to thank you, Em. I want to thank you, Pen Parentis. This is such an amazing opportunity and an amazing honor. So without further ado, I'll jump into this kind of crazy piece that I sent in on a whim almost. So here it goes. Dear Barbie Arm, on the corner of 5th and Market. This isn't about you. It isn't about the Barbie you once belonged to, or the kid that Barbie might still belong to. It isn't about my own kids' Barbies, their tiny hands and feet chewed into sausage by the dog, or the windows to my kids' school, propped widely open despite the cold, or the angry music screaming through my earbuds as I stomp off anxiety while the kids inside learn math and reading and how not to touch one another, how to scrub their red hands raw, how to adapt. This isn't about those kids. It's about my kid, but you're easier to talk to. If it weren't for germs, I'd pick you up and make you into art, align you in the gutter beside a smashed mask and fast food wrappers, bend you into impossible anatomical angles, snap close-ups, make artsy references to dead women everywhere, because there are so many. You're just an arm, a small, broken part of a much bigger problem. But this isn't about trash or the patriarchy or how many re-microwaved cups of coffee and calls to my mother 4 states away it takes to get me through the day. It's not about the way your elbow joints are frozen in place, limiting your mobility even on a good attached day, or how, when Ariel gave away her voice, she gave away everything. It's not about the bedtime conversation we had last night when my daughter said, Charlie has a real gun at home that he's going to show me. Because the good news is that she told me about that gun. This isn't about guns at all, or the positions she leaves Barbies in on the staircase, the tippy-toed girl doll pinned beneath anatomically incorrect Ken, his face so close to hers he's probably whispering something gruesome in her ear. It's not about poor little Skipper, hung upside down from the dream house chandelier by a shoestring she'd pulled out of my Doc Martens, boots I once trekked through Europe in, through ancient ruins, bus terminals, and dinner halls. Rooftop parties, street protest, silent art museum wings. This isn't about my shoes, their laces, or even poor Skipper, who is only plastic, felt, and synthetic hair. I'm curious how you ended up here, how we all do. I don't mean meaning of life crap which we addressed when she was 5 and declared from beneath a public bathroom stall, there must be more to life than this. Or even that sliding doors concept of parallel lives, one in which I took the train and never married him, never had her, never taught her how to slurp raw oysters from their shells while searching open water for mermaids, orcas, and the Loch Ness Monster. Could she even swim this far? Because in our version, the monster is always a girl. What I'm asking is, who left you here? And why does my heart ache over your abandonment? Exactly what kind of trigger are you? You're even shaped like one, minus the gun, a comma without a sentence. You make me think there's something I'm missing, something I'm longing for so deeply that I've forgotten it completely. What am I missing? There's something I'm missing, but it isn't you. Thank you.
Yay! I could hear that story over and over and over again.
Me too.
So Kelly, we would like to present you with this beautiful certificate of merit. Here you go. Whoosh. Yay, magic! Oh, that was beautiful. I wanted to also give a shout out to some previous fellows who have done amazing things this week. Jennifer Fliss has a story out in Hippocampus, just came out. Jessica Kersey Hines has an article in today's Lit Hub that you all must read. Elizabeth Pagel-Hogan has a book out on Leonardo da Vinci. Frank Haberle this past month just finally published his debut novel, which is called Shufflers. Meg Pillow has just gotten a column in Catapult. So I'm sure that our other fellows are also doing equally brilliantly, but these are just the ones that we happened to know about. So please make sure that, after your year that you stay in touch with us and we will continue to love you as we do now. Kelly, thank you very much for coming on our show.
Thank you, Kelly.
We will see you at AWP because we will be sponsoring your registration there. And more later.
Thanks, everyone.
And now on to the rest of the show. Are we ready?
Wonderful. So our first reader tonight is Amy Shearn. She's the author, as I said before, of the novels How Far is the Ocean from Here, The Mermaid of Brooklyn, and Unseen City, which was awarded the 2021 Independent Publisher Book Awards Gold Medal in Literary Fiction. She's a senior editor at Medium, where she works on publications Human Parts and Creators Hub, and her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Slate, Real Simple, and many other literary publications. She's received a Promise Award grant from the Sustainable Arts Foundation and has participated with her children in family-friendly residencies at Space, on Ryder Farm, and the Unruly Retreat. Amy lives in Brooklyn with her 12-year-old daughter and her 10-year-old son. Everyone, please welcome Amy Shearn.
Yay!
Oh, thank you, Christina. That's so nice. And thanks to Pen Parentis for having me here. You guys are the best. Can't really imagine being a writer parent in this world without Pen Parentis. So thanks for existing. And I'm so glad to be here. And hi, Dad, in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to read from my most recent book, Unseen City. All you need to know is that this is a pair of adult siblings in New York City talking about real estate, as everyone in New York City does. Okay. Ready? Everyone ready? Ready. Okay. It's a brother named James and a sister named Meg. So what's all this about your apartment? It's like every conversation in New York City. Okay. Oh, right. I'm getting kicked out. My annoying neighbor told me first, then my landlady sent me an email. An email. She's selling. Sorry. The co-op board is trying to root out all the wicked renters and subletters. Meg was suddenly near tears. The apartment had become part of her, an exoskeleton that allowed her mushy, defenseless body to survive. This was an unfamiliar pain, dull, sometimes ignorable, crawling through her belly like indigestion. She didn't want to cry, focused her eyes out the window instead, studying the community garden across the street that had until recently been an empty lot fertile with broken glass, rat nests, drug dealers. Scabrous roses rattled against the garden's fence, having survived the first frost and now looking for more ways to show their strength. Maybe growing in the rocky urban soil had given them superpowers, and maybe any moment they would reach out and bend the bars and scurry down the street, their roots agile as spider legs, leaving a trail of dirt in their wake. But James was waiting for an answer. He had said something, was waiting. She could tell by the way he was looking at her, by the taut quality of air between them. Sorry, what? He sighed. I'm saying, he said in a slightly louder voice, as if talking to a lost tourist, I can help you. We'll figure it out. Eugene has a client whose wife is this super awesome real estate agent. She actually specializes in affordable rentals. She's like idealistic or something. And anyway, if you need first and last month's rent for a place or somewhere to stay, Eugene and I can help. Warmth settled in Meg's chest, surging with love for the boy she'd spent so many years torturing. Thanks, Jamie. I'm sure it'll be fine, but that's nice. James sipped his coffee. And Mom and Dad would be overjoyed to have you move back in, he added, raising an eyebrow. The warmth bottomed out. Meg scowled. You're an asshole, you know that? How humiliating would that be? The spinster daughter living at home, caring for her elderly parents like an emotionally stunted Jane Eyre without even hope of a Mr. Rochester in a humid, rent-controlled 2.5 apartment? There, after all, was the fear, the ultimate fear of the woman alone, that she wouldn't be able to hack it, that the world would consider itself proven right, that she had needed a husband after all, for the financial stability, if nothing else. There she was, like the desiccated post-prime roses in the alley garden, slamming her once pretty head against a once welcome fence. But this was also silly. She was probably just hungry, because where on earth was her breakfast? The cafe had never been so crowded before. Here came all the people flooding in, taking over everything that had once been hers. She hated everyone who walked in the door, accusing each one of being the well-to-do buyer about to snatch her apartment, her life, away from her, resenting the confidence that came with having enough money to not think about money. That's it.
Yay!
She's fine.
Amy.
Thanks for listening.
That apartment is pretty glorious.
She's a great apartment. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, that actually is one of the conversations we always have in New York. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your book and how you came to write it? Like what spurred you on?
Yeah. Well, this book took a really long time to write. And
what's really long to you?
It was like maybe 6 years.
See, people, there's hope.
And writing. I know that's actually not that long, but it's my third book. I feel like first books always take 10 years, and that's normal. But that's different. There's a lot happening there. But when I started writing this book, my kids were little. I didn't have a lot of time. I did a lot of research. Anyway, and I really liked the idea of telling kind of two stories, two sort of New York City stories at once, a sort of contemporary one, and there's also a historical strand in the story. And one of the kind of spurs of it was at the time I was first started thinking about this book, my then husband and I were house hunting, and I remember thinking like, okay, the only houses we could afford in New York City are 100% haunted in like a not chill way, like angry ghosts only is in our price point. So I ended up thinking a lot about spaces in the city, who can afford what space, what it feels like to feel. The character in this book really feels like the city doesn't really want her there, is kind of working to push her out because she's a single woman who, she works at a library. She doesn't have a lot of income. She can kind of just squeak by, but if any piece of that falls apart, she has no safety net. She can't figure it out. So thinking a lot about who the city belongs to. And then in the historical strand of the story too, that theme is happening. You know, whose city is this? Who can call this home? And what happens to a space when you live in it? Oh, and did I already say there's a haunted house? Okay, so that's the other part of the story, is the historical strand of the story comes through because it's the story of the haunted house that the main character is. She doesn't live in it, but she's becomes friends with the person who owns it, and they're researching it together.
I'm wondering if that little farm thing, like in the middle of the projects, is that, I know that it's real because I looked it up, but my question is, did you know about it before you wrote it, or did you come across it and go, oh my God, this has to go in my book?
I did. I started writing a version of this book that had it had a ghost in the house that was from, you know, a long time ago in Brooklyn. And I knew I wanted it to be before Brooklyn was Brooklyn. Exactly. And then when I was researching sort of interesting historical periods in Brooklyn's history, I came across Weeksville, which is what you're talking about, Milda, which is, it was sort of a utopian farming community started and inhabited by free landowning African Americans before the Civil War. And this was when Brooklyn was all just farms, and then sort of, you know, the rest of Brooklyn kind of grew up around this town, and the town kind of got subsumed into Brooklyn. But then recently in the 1960s, part of it was sort of recovered. You know, some sort of amateur archaeologists were like, wait a minute, what are these farmhouses doing in the middle of Brooklyn, and why are they off the city grid? And now part of that community called Weeksville is now preserved. It's amazing. I feel like a lot of people don't know, but I mean, it's pretty far out in Brooklyn. You have to get pretty far out there, but it's this, right? It's like you turn a corner and all of a sudden you're on this farm, and there's these farmhouses, and they've done a really nice job preserving it. And it's very magical to go visit. Yeah. And then once I kind of learned about it, I kind of couldn't stop thinking about it, and just did all this research and ended up having part of the story take place there.
Amy, I'm actually going to be asking you a little more about research later. We're going to have a Q&A afterwards, because I'm really fascinated about that. So let's move on to our second reader, and that is Josen Barello, and I'm really excited that he's here tonight. He's the author, as I said, of Spindle City, and it was a finalist for the Connecticut Book Award, and it was longlisted for the Penn Hemingway Debut Novel Award. He teaches writing at Central Connecticut State University, directs the Yale Writers Workshop and the Connecticut Literary Festival, and curates the Roar Reading Series, and is the publisher of the award-winning Elephant Rock books. He and his wife grow boys and flowers on Muddy Feet Flower Farm in eastern Connecticut. Everyone, please welcome Jotham Burello. And Jotham, can you please tell us a little bit about your book before you start reading?
Of course. I want to thank you, Christina. We've never been in the same room together, but I've seen you on Zoom a few times. It's nice to see you, and thank you to Em and Pen Parentis, and congratulations to Kelly. That sounds like you're in good hands for the next year. I think Amy set me up well. My book is historical, and we're going to go. The theme tonight is the haves and the have-nots, and I think my section I chose to read from the book hits it right between the eyes here. So Spindle City is Fall River, Massachusetts. At the turn of the 20th century, it was one of the leading textile producers in the nation, if not the world. And like most textile mills in New England, you had Yankee owners and you had operatives who ran the mills. So there's a great class divide there. In Fall River, the Yankees lived in the Highlands, and the operatives in the mid 18th century, they came really from, or 19th century, they came from Europe. In the part I'm reading about, there's a lot of French Canadians and there's a lot of Portuguese. The diaspora Portuguese is pretty great. So I'm going to read a section. One of my characters, there's a lot of characters, but this is Joseph Bartlett. He's an owner, but he's a reluctant owner. He married into a family called the Durfees, and there was a fire. There's always a fire, and he became the lead agent of the mill. He's out on a Sunday, and he runs into Sara Strong. Sara Strong is they'd call her a rabble-rouser, and God forbid she was a suffragist. And she's there to organize labor, and she needs his help, and he's reluctant to help her. So she kind of bullies him into saying, come with me, I'm going to show you the worst neighborhood in your city that he's never been to. So we're going to pick it up, and they're going to go for a little walk together. The neighborhood's called the Cogsworth. My effort to be Dickens, the Cogsworth neighborhood. It's kind of a crummy place. So here we go. And we start with Joseph. And he is, his driver is Wiggins, who's a kind of a drunk Irishman, and they've had to change clothes. He wants to blend in. No one can know who he is here. Joseph took the trolley up President's Avenue and walked to Drover's. It being a Sunday and hot as hell, there was a lazy mood in the streets. Families bought foodstuffs in peddlers' carts and a few open shops. Young men under awnings passed cigarettes. A middle-aged man in a red vest eyed Joseph suspiciously. They rubbed shoulders as Joseph passed. Down the block, a woman leaned against a lamppost, licking an ice cream. She caught Joseph's eye and followed it into Drover's. Inside, he passed by Sara Strong's table, kicking it with his foot, and then turned back outside. He glanced at the lamppost and caught sight of a young man guiding the ice cream woman down the block. And it's 1911, by the way, I should have mentioned that. Across the street were four identical triple-deckers with mansard roofs and clapboard siding with narrow corner boards. Each had a type of handcrafted ornamentation at the cornice and door frames not seen in recent years. Piano music stopped and started. Joseph's son Will was learning similar songs. The small yards were well tended. Herbs and tomato plants were cut into small beds out back. These were the homes of civil servants and overseers, not unskilled workers. There were homes. The sun dipped, but the heat was still oppressive. The windows were thrown open. In one, a woman pulled a thread from between her lips and eased it through the eye of a needle. In another, a bare-chested boy shined a row of shoes, the tips hanging over the street. A man handed Joseph a flyer for a concert at the local parish. Sara Strong stood behind him. I didn't recognize you. Again with the wink. Hopefully she was the only one not fooled. No one would believe if they saw them together. These aren't what I want to show you. Let's walk. Where to? The edge of the Flint, Cogsworth country. The Cogsworth mills, boarding houses, and tenements were routinely singled out in the labor papers for health violations. Cogsworth Sr. was among the first mill owners to stroll through Quebec, offering carrots of salvation to desperate farmhands. For a month's pay, the wagoner would deliver the novices to a Cogsworth boarding house and then to the mill, where a supervisor would note the novice's name and impose a weekly garnish, usually twice the agreed amount, to pay back the mill for advancing the wagoner its fee. This neighborhood, Sara explained, was one of the 5 she'd been researching. It appeared she'd rented rooms nearby. Among the unhappiest of the unhappy, Joseph said, your mission won't prove much of a tussle. The mostly Irish police force, whose fathers and mothers told in the mills a generation before, rarely come to these streets. They wait till the noise of rebellion swells to their triple-decker apartments in Corky Row. I know all this, Joseph said. Sara shook her head at him. She ended the travelogue with a short historical summary that Joseph had no desire to be reminded of. At first, the mill owners supplied the rooms to house workers who had no rent money or transportation. Villagers sprung up around the mill for the workers. Now they trapped them. He had to admit, mill owners did not make very good landlords. Jefferson Cleveland, the matriarch of his mill, Cleveland, had built houses in the 1870s and shortly thereafter sold them to his workers at cost. Nearing the Cogsworth area, the scenery changed, and so did the smell. See how the buildings are clustered close on the sides, how they loom over the street, affording no relief from the stench of garbage, Sara said, and she spit. Each tenement house, 4 to 6 families. The yards or dirt piles bred dust and more garbage. The granite bedrock foundations made service pipes impossibly expensive, and the owners never pressured the mayor to do anything before 1880, so none of the plumbing, or they were poorly rigged. Communal privies stood in clustered courtyards. Some families rigged pipes down the windows. In the front of the next tenement, a square section of lawn had been cordoned off with stakes and black ribbon. Funny, Joseph thought. The dirt in the square area was the color of cinnamon. Now that is queer, he said aloud, observing that in the center, the plot was green, or sort of green and brown and wet. He turned to Sara. Water in this heat? Cesspool burp, she said. They haven't seen the honey wagon in 6 months. She dipped a toe into the creeping stream of black muck lining the gutter. Cogsworth has mastered every legal maneuver to make even the most ardent state house representative weary. These drains are not far from their water source. She wiped the toe of the paper. She wiped her toe on a piece of paper in the street. Dysentery, anyone? She kicked the shit paper at Joseph, and he leapt backward, nearly tripping. A boy in overalls and a dirty undershirt passed, pulling a dog missing a hind leg, towing in turn a cart of iron pipes. Move out! The boy shouted as he marched upon the folks, who split and came back without even looking at his cargo. Joseph stopped in the road when he passed. Sara pulled his sleeve. That boy is a few years younger than Will. Probably never seen a school. Joseph continued walking. How did she know so much? He could see where standing water had evaporated in the dips of the road, leaving behind a dirty green fungus. Mosquitoes swarmed around the bits of rotten fruit in the gutter. In the distance, a rooster crowed. Every few blocks, the ground floor door was missing. In its place hung a curtain of tobacco smoke. Crowds of men stood inside, carousing, their laughter and curses reaching the street. Men in rough clothes, smoking clay pipes, climbed up the cellar stairs, hauling pails of ale. Watching the exchanges, Joseph bumped shoulders of a woman wrapped in a dark shawl. Air sloshed out from under it, splattering his shoes. Kitchen bars, rum houses, the dealers distribute too, she said, all in violation of the boarding house rules. Want to go enforce your owner friend's rules? At a distinct disadvantage, Joseph kept moving from one grocery to another instead of challenging Sara. She'd continue to bait him no matter what he said. He had no answer. He was not the savior of Fall River. And I'll stop there. They continue on, and she did rent some rooms, and we meet, she has, God forbid, she has a woman lover named Missy, who she looks at him and says immediately, she just looks up and says, "You're not as tall as I thought you'd be." It's the first thing out of her mouth. So he has a tough road ahead of him here, but he gets out of there. And Sarah Strong is a character that I just love when I wrote the book. So I'm glad I got to read part of her. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Is she a character based on someone that you researched or heard about, or just?
Yeah, she's like everybody. She's just this composite that we all use. And there was a number of women who really, there was a group of folks that came from Vermont and Bangor, where there was actually violent protests. And she was kind of a composite of that. She actually went to Mount Holyoke. I learned she speaks fluent French, and she's into midwifery. So she does a lot of things. And then she comes to Fall River, but there's this sense of danger around her that she's really they're gonna grab the operatives and cause some violence. And that's kind of a threat that she brings. But she was just a composite of a number of folks. There is a picture, I can't remember the name, but of an actual label reader from the time. And in her rooms, there's a picture posted with the woman and a quote of hers that I did use. So I'm trying to kind of give away a little of the research and get a nod to the actual, hardworking people that supported the operatives at the time.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Also, I think that places should start serving pails of ale.
Yeah, how about that? They probably do on some college campuses I've been to. But,
Thank you so much, Jotham.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
We will come back to you during the
We'll grill you.
Yes, we're going to grill you.
Thanks a lot.
Our final reader tonight is Sara Schaff. Hello, Sara.
Hi.
She's the author of the story collections, The Invention of Love and Say Something Nice About Me. It's a CLMP Firecracker Award finalist in fiction and 2017 Next Generation Indie Book Award finalist for short fiction. Her writings has appeared in Catapult, Kenyon Review Online, Yale Review Online, Michigan Quarterly Review, LitHub, and elsewhere. A graduate of Brown University and the MFA program at the University of Michigan, Sara has taught at Oberlin, the University of Michigan, and St. Lawrence University, as well as in China, Colombia, and Northern Ireland, where she also studied storytelling. Sara is an assistant professor of English at SUNY Plattsburgh and lives in North Country of New York with her husband, the poet Benjamin Landry, and their daughter. She's on Twitter, so you can find her there. Everyone, please welcome Sara Schaff.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Christina. Thank you so much for having me. Milda, thank you so much for hosting these and to Pen Parentis for existing. And it's so great to meet all of you writers. Thanks to everyone who came. I am going to read from my first book, actually, my first collection of stories, Say Something Nice About Me, because there's a story in here that I never got to read when it came out. And for me, it spoke to me of the themes that we're talking about tonight. And it is set in a dormitory in the summer, and that's all that you need. It's called That Won't Be Necessary. Before the summer crew painted the dorms, they had to clean every room. In 303, Lucy stood on a ladder to scrape glow-in-the-dark pinup models from the ceiling. Meanwhile, her painting partner was busy unfurling a stained yellow bedsheet she'd pulled from a dresser drawer. Mind if I take this, Steph cooed? The thread count's incredible. Finders keepers, Lucy said, words I like to live by. Dirty linens aside, it was amazing the things students left behind. Mini refrigerators, toaster ovens, MP3 players, an almost brand new laptop with sociology papers and photos of topless cheerleaders stored on the hard drive. That morning, Lucy had claimed a flat screen television left in the closet of 303. She was simultaneously appalled and exhilarated by what her fellow undergraduates were willing to part with. Appalled by the wastefulness, exhilarated by the hunt for new treasures. Steph was singing now to the tune of Uptown Girl. One man's trash is this woman's new wardrobe. Lucy rolled her eyes. Everyone already knew Steph's plan. To sew an entire line of fall dresses made out of the things she found in Jefferson Hall, the massive Pemberley campus dormitory their crew had been charged with painting by the end of the summer. Cigarette break, Steph called. With the sheet wrapped around her body, toga style, she waved from the door. It wasn't even break time, but Lucy felt relieved. Without Steph's background chatter, she could more easily daydream about seducing Gus, a polite townie on their crew. He had been her partner for a day when Steph was sick last week. They worked together on the second floor, where Lucy found the retro boombox, which she carried around the dorm with her, tuned to the local public radio station. Gus was a quiet guy, and she hadn't dared speak to him for fear of betraying her feelings. During the academic year, he cooked at the same dining hall where she fulfilled her work-study obligation by wiping tables and cleaning out the coffee filters between mealtimes. She liked that Gus wasn't a student. His life seemed important and real to her. He had a tattoo of a giant squid on one arm and orbiting planets on another. She believed that Gus was nothing like Patrick, the brawny and crass lacrosse player she'd had sex with months before on his narrow dormitory bed, elevated from the ground by concrete blocks, so that she wouldn't finish her first year of college a virgin. By the time Steph returned, Lucy had finished scraping and begun pouring thick latex paint into her aluminum tray. Steph laughed. You're already covered. It was true. Paint on her arm, her pants, her shoe. It took so little effort for Lucy to make a mess. Humming a top 40 tune, Steph arranged her drop cloth and painting paraphernalia with surprising precision. Even though she acted lazy and careless, she was, to Lucy's chagrin, efficient and clean when she finally decided to work. By the time lunch hour rolled around, she had completed her section of the room, while Lucy was only halfway finished with one wall. Steph's purple bandana remained spotless, while Lucy's dark hair was streaked with white. She felt a painful jealousy flare up. She tried to fight off the feeling. On her way to eat, Lucy stepped from Jefferson Hall into the bright sunlight, and Steph ran past her toward her adoring crowd of male painters sprawled in the grass in front of the dorm. They laughed gleefully as she lifted her shirt to show an invisible dot of paint on her back. Lucy walked more slowly. she decided to hold on to her jealousy. It felt righteous, necessary, calming, and it made her feel superior, although she couldn't explain why. And I'm going to stop there.
Thank you. So, Sara, you mainly write short stories, correct?
I do. I'm working on a novel now, and I finished a draft. But yes, I feel like I am a short story writer.
You know how people always wonder, like, how do authors decide whether or not they have a short story or they have a novel?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get a sense of that? Can you let them know?
Well, because I feel like I am most at home with short stories, that is usually what I assume I am writing. The novel that I just finished a draft of, I was kept trying to make it a story originally. And I'm embarrassed to say how many years ago that started. It was a very long time ago. But it just it didn't work. So I feel like sometimes when you know you're hitting a wall with where the thing wants to go. I mean, for me, the short story shape, the arc takes shape pretty quickly when I'm writing it. And the fact that it really wasn't, the story I wanted to tell wasn't fitting into that narrative arc. That's what kind of let me know it needed to meander a little bit more. And for me, the short story has these wonderful limitations, a structure that something fits into.
Yeah, just kind of needed to breathe, huh?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So Amy and Jotham, you both also are novelists, and you have this historical aspect of your work. And how did you decide to actually make that your focus?
Amy, how'd you do that?
Well, this is my first book. This is my third novel, and it's the first one I've done historical research for.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I don't know that I would do it again at this exact moment. It was a really interesting experience. I think I just wanted to do something. No, I'm actually stalling because I'm trying to remember really why I did this to myself. I was like, it's really hard to find writing time. It's really hard to get a book published, all these things. So how can I make it more difficult for myself?
Yeah.
I know. I'll add like a whole other project, and it'll really be 2 books in one. But I think that, I think what it really was my second book was about a mom who lives in Brooklyn. And I got really annoyed and tired of talking to people who said, or, readings or reviews of the book or whatever that conflated the character with me. And I was like, God, that's such a reductive reading. How come this always happens to women, fiction writers? Every character we write is us. What? We have no imagination. I'm going to write something totally different. I'm going to get totally outside of my life, do this research, really enter another consciousness, really push myself as a novelist. I wrote about this single woman. Now I'm divorced. I'm the age of my character. I'm like, okay, now I look a lot like her again. Okay, but
this is a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
Next book is about a lottery winner.
Exactly right. Just in case.
Pulitzer Prize winning Nobel.
Exactly. Just in case I really am like a prophet, maybe. I should be really careful what I write. But I don't know. But part of it, I really was just trying to challenge myself as a writer, do something totally different. And then once I got this idea in my head of, well, how much like texture would that give a book to have a whole other storyline? Then I got really obsessed, as maybe Jotham, I don't know if you can relate. Once you start digging into the research, you're like, wait, I want to know more and more and more. And you just, it becomes like a little bit of like an addiction. I don't know. You just want to know more.
In my case, first of all, I have my other book that's in the drawer that'll never be published. That's my graduate thesis. Yeah, there you go. And then mine's more of a personal connection. My mother's from Fall River, Massachusetts, at one point, my aunt was 92 in the early aughts, and I finally sat her fanny down in her retirement community, and we recorded all these interviews about her time as a young girl. She was born in 1908, and if anyone's ever been to Cape Cod, raise your hand. You've driven right through Fall River, really fast on 95, and you just can't. You look at this city, you come over the Braga Bridge, you're like, what is this place? And it's these hulking granite buildings, and I've always been fascinated by it, and I've always gone to my grandmother's house. So I just started to research it, and I think at some point I knew there was a book there that I wanted to, of course, create my own characters in and exaggerate it. But the other thing is about the research, I think I'd spent a lot of time in the basement of the Historical Society where there's a lot of Lizzie Borden stuff in Fall River, Massachusetts. And at some point, I remember it was Anthony Minghella who wrote or directed the English Patient. And I remember he said something, I remember reading about how he wrote the screenplay, and he said, I'd read Ondaatje's book a long time. And then I went to write the screenplay, and I took all my research, but I didn't bring the source material. And I think for me, with an historical novel, they got to a point where, or as John McPhee says, I saw myself coming around the other side in the research. Like, I'd seen enough. And then I was pretty confident I could then go pull it off. I knew what kind of, the ale and the king, whatever beer they drank, all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't so concerned about that. I just had to be confident in the voice. And it was difficult. I'm working on a new book that's contemporary and not like this at all. And it's much more free. I think there's a certain amount of, there are no people looking over your shoulder, like from Fall River, like, hey, you got it wrong. And another thing I think about in historical fiction, if I go to Piccadilly Circus and I come out of this tube in London, for instance, I got to see neon, right? That's what it is. But if I go down a street and I go down an alley and then there's this pub I want to create, then I can be imaginative. There's a point where there's a divide between what it was in Fall River, what I want to be. So like the Cogsworth neighborhood, it was the worst of everything I'd read, and I put it in one place to sort of exaggerate it. And I knew I wanted to make it up that way. So there's a mix of that. Sometimes I like when I'm confused about it, like I can't put my finger and say, this is real and this is not real anymore. So I kind of forgot, but that was kind of my process. But it took a while. Everyone's talking about time, and Sarah's talking about time with her book. It took me a long time to figure that out. And just revision's the key for me. It's all about revising. I don't put any pressure on myself, just writing all this kind of spots. I don't know what the beginning and end is, because I know when I revise it all, it's all going to get redone. But that's the way I work with my kids and all the other business we do, right?
Wow, that's awesome.
Let's quick go through and find out about your kids, just how old they are, and like how long have you been writing with kids of this size and how many? Just real quick. Sarah?
My daughter, just one. She's 9. So yeah, it's been since then. I was actually pregnant with her when I went to my first and only writing residency.
Oh, wow.
So, and I had terrible morning sickness. So
Did you have 1,000 people telling you why this was a terrible choice to do?
Well, it was so early on, I wasn't even telling anyone. I was just really sick. So I was like,
pretending that you were hungover.
Yeah. Everyone's like, she's not drinking, and yet she's so unfriendly. And so that was like my last moment of freedom, and I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. So it's hard, especially during the pandemic. That was just nothing happening.
Yeah.
Well, we were homeschooling her. She wasn't even doing remote school. So it was a lost year.
Hard to find time to write when you have to be the teacher in the room.
Yeah.
For sure. Jotham, how old are your kids?
I have 3 boys. I have an 18-year-old applying to college. I have a 15-year-old who's going in an awkward stage with his braces and everything. And then I have an 11-year-old. So they've been around the whole time.
Yeah.
But we don't live. I live in kind of rural Connecticut, so like I have a big office, and we have plenty of space, so they can just go away.
But do they stay away? Like, do they respect your space? If you say like, "Dad's, I'm out," are they good with that?
It's more like if I respect their spaces. Let's remember they're all connected to their devices and everything. Like, come down to dinner, please. We're ready. We want to see you again. Yeah, but I don't know. It's funny, as we've been talking, like I've been making notes. Like I'm not a believer, and there's nothing in writer's block. You just write. I have no time to make excuses or stop. I mean, it's just, I do a lot of stuff. So it's always got to be happening. My new trick is I'm in the car when I commute to campus every day, and I found my voice record. So I'll talk to myself and the characters. I'm listening to books on tape. I just finished Harlem Shuffle, and like I'll pause Colin Whitehead, and I'll say, "Oh, okay," and I'll say something, and then it's a process, and I just transcribe what I wrote, and it just kind of, again, my process is building pages of material, so that I can print it out, put it on the kitchen table, and say, "What do I have?" I mean, I
How
just got to
was that
make
when they
stuff.
were toddlers? Did you have 1,000 papers and then they were like,
Yeah,
kitchen
you know,
table?
it's not always so easy, that's for sure. Now they can wipe themselves, so it's much easier. And they can make, you know, bagel donuts or whatever the things they make, their pizza bagels. So no, it was tough, but my wife's really supportive too. And you know, I'm real fortunate. I teach, but we just have, you know, I can Zoom class if I choose to. So last week I said, I'm Zooming next week. So away in the syllabus, I said, I'm going away for a week. I told my wife in August this last week, and I went away to a place I could go. I Zoomed my students, turned them off, and I wrote for a week.
Wow,
So,
that's great.
but I plan that months in advance. I mean, I have to think about that way.
Amy,
But they're good kids.
how's your...
So mine are 10 and 12. Yeah, and people out there with little kids, it's so much easier now. But you know, I was writing before the kids, went to graduate school and all of those things. And my first novel came out in 2008, and I found out I was pregnant with my daughter the day the book came out. So it's like,
wow.
there's not a lot happening right now.
It's the
really
perfect time for
surprise.
it to happen. It's like,
I mean, it kind of is, because I've never had that thing where I think some authors, a book comes out and they're super fixated on the book, and they're, you know, checking the sales and the rankings and all these things. And I've always been either too morning sick, that first book, or too busy with kids to like fixate on it, which is kind of a blessing in disguise, I think. Just, I don't know, a certain level of distraction, I think, is like a great gift for a writer on the publishing side. You can't fixate. You don't have time. Like as Jotham was saying, like I don't have time for writer's block either. I just don't have time for that. But yeah, so now it's so much easier, the ages that they are now. My fourth book, which is going to come out at some point in the next few years. Gotta sign that contract. Hasn't arrived yet. That was me knocking on wood. Everybody knock on wood. It's like a verbal agreement. Like I don't know, people who haven't published, I don't know if you know, like so much in publishing is like weird, old timey, like handshake agreements. And they're like, we'll get you the contract. You're like,
5 months later.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a different metabolism. But that book was actually mostly written during when I was pre-pandemic on my lunch breaks at my job that I had then, because I was like, oh wow, I have a lunch break every day. I was home with little kids for a long time. This is way easier when you have a job and you have a lunch break. You have an hour every day. It's like a writing retreat. So, you know, you work with what you got.
Yeah, you bet. Sara, do you have any secret, like weird writing notes of like how you got your writing done?
I feel like it has to change every few years. So my main note is just be adaptable, because I mean, when I wrote my first book after grad school, before I had a child, and a lot of it at work, you know, or after work, you know, when I still had energy to do things in the evenings. The next book I was working on the stories, whenever my kid was just doing something else, or just, you know, in minute by minute increments. So I just, after being in grad school and being told, you know, you need to write every day, I could never really do that, but just write whenever I could. And then to get a draft done of the novel, what I did was I just Jotham, like kind of like what you were saying, like I had to plan. I was like, I need to, after this year of a lost year, I need to really make time to get this done. Otherwise it's never. So for my birthday, I told my husband I want a weekend in Burlington to go to a B&B and write. And then our kid's babysitter got vaccinated, or she had been a babysitter before the pandemic, and she is in high school, and she's like, I just got my vaccine. I was like, oh, great, we are scheduling some hours this summer. And so she would come for like July and August. She came about 8 hours a week, which is not a lot, but I got a lot done. I got a draft of the novel done in that time. So
well done.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's get back to the theme. Let's get back to haves and have-nots. I wanted to ask, so delicately. So here we are, super white. And how do you confront the theme? Like, okay, so you're a have because. So, and you know, when you're writing a character that's not you, what is it that you do to make sure that it's authentic, to make sure that it's like good, to make sure that it is not going to harm anybody, that it's not going to be, you know, condescending or wrong or stupid? What do you do? How do you deal with that? Especially since many of you have written, I know, Amy, yours, you've got lots of various characters.
Yeah, I can say I was, writing this book, Unseen City, there's some non-white characters, and I went in feeling, of course, this was like also like a different era because it was 1,000 years ago, but I went in thinking, well, any fiction writer can write any character they want, as long as all of these characters are made up, even my white characters who look like me. And if I just treat them with compassion and empathy, sort of the radical empathy that it takes to write any fictional character, and I try to understand them from the inside out, then I think I'm good. I got to a point about halfway through writing the book where I thought, no, that's not okay. And maybe this is not even a book that I publish. But I kind of kept working on it anyway, just to see, because I thought, well, even if this book doesn't get published, this is a really good exercise for me as a writer. I'm really, it's a hard exercise as a writer that is important to do. And I just really thought about, I mean, the way you think about any character, really trying to enter their world, think about, you know, how they would experience the world in a different way maybe than you did. I did a lot of reading from things written by people in the community that I was writing about, especially like journals and letters and things like that, sort of like the kind of unvarnished, like real way that people talk to themselves and each other. I had some kind of sensitivity readers at various steps along the way. But I think really like the key is to ask interrogate your own motivations and ask yourself, you know, why am I writing this character? Does this character have to be this way? Do I have the right to tell this story? Is this character important in the book, or did I just throw them in for some reason? And like, who am I to be writing this? I just feel like you have to ask yourself some really hard questions and be really, really honest about it with yourself. And I mean, in the end, I don't know if I did a good job of writing these characters or not. I mean, I know it's extra fraught when you're writing about race, and it's something that I think about a lot whenever I'm writing. You know, I had a character in one of my previous books that has like clinical depression and is suicidal, which is something that I have never experienced. And I was really, really nervous about getting that right too. It was another time when I thought, oh my God, this is not mine to write. I'm going to get this wrong. People are going to hate me for doing this. But it's like, anytime you're writing fiction, you're like really trying to dive to, I feel like, an experience that's different than your own. And I don't know, you take some risks. Like maybe, I don't know if it succeeded. I hope it did.
I liked your word compassion. I think that that's a beautiful
Mhm.
word to use for your characters. What about you, Jotham? How about when you were writing the four-sided
Well, in
town?
this book, I think I have a number of characters, and one of them is a Portuguese character named João, and João is, he has his own story to tell, and I think part of it in a book of Fall River, if I didn't have a Portuguese character, there'd be a problem, and I hope there's a great Portuguese novelist who will write a book about Fall River's diaspora of Portuguese, the laborers and what the town has become. But I did exactly what Amy's saying. I mean, I read authentic. Letters, and there's a number behind the chair behind me. There's a box of junk, and one of them is just letters of Portuguese fishermen from New Bedford, and all these things you find. And I said earlier, like the John McFay thing, as soon as I felt myself, like I could see myself reading the research around the other side, okay, I feel like I have a handle of this. But it was something, it took a long time. And I think the women in the book, another thing, suffragists from 1911, I don't know many of them, and I just had to read, and they were the most fun to write. I think I want to put the joy back into the process too. It's like trying to channel that voice, and then it would kind of go with there's three women in there that are really excited to just read them. I mean, I don't know what they're going to say to me. I think when I got in that zone, I had to earn it though, that's for sure. And then as Amy's saying, people read the book and they cut. There's a scene, I'm right near the end of the process, and there was a scene with Joseph and Sarah Strong. And it goes really south badly. And someone's like, it's not authentic to what he's really about. And you're not doing a service to Sarah. And I'm months away from turning the book in. And I just cut the whole thing.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I hear you. And I do appreciate the sensitivity. It wasn't about that. It wasn't authentic to him at that point. What do we need? And what I had to do is I had to go back to looking at him up and down and looking at Sarah. And that's when I discovered that she spoke French. I discovered that she had delivered babies up in Bangor, and she grew as a character result of that. And then the chapter, it ends totally different, of course, and it changes the tenor of the book right in the middle of the book. So I think those outside readers are really key, but kind of listening to what they're saying. I think if it's authentic to the character, then I have a problem with it. The research I thought was spot on. It's my execution of it through them, because it's their experience on the page. I really think that all art communicates something. It's not my job to determine what that's going to be. And when you have a trade book that's going everywhere, I really don't. People are going to have different responses.
Sure.
And I'm sensitive to them, some of them. I think there's, the really tough praise and then the really critical praise. I kind of just think what's in the middle of a reader's experience.
Have you had any experience with this, Sara, in your stories?
Yeah, well, throughout all of my work, I'm obsessed with financial insecurity and inequality and class systems, and sometimes that involves race, and sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of it's rooted in just my own experience. So I can't say that I grew up poor, since there are people in my life that my grandparents on my mother's side, they were very comfortable, but we were very financially insecure when I was little. And I had that kind of insecurity lodged in me when I was little. And also living in rural upstate New York. So I grew up outside of Ithaca, and now I live in northern New York. And there's just so much rural poverty that just has gone completely ignored for so many years. And just every day, like, I was just witness to not just my own sense of, fear about what was going on with my family, but just real destructive poverty. So in my first book kind of deals with that a little bit more specifically, just because it felt like something that I had been thinking about so much, and obsessing about. And so that's something that's even, I'm still exploring class systems in the novel I'm writing, but it's also expanded to England and, class systems and racial segregation there, through.
Let me
That's not,
ask-
yeah.
Let me ask real quick for each of you to respond.
Yeah.
How do you keep from your fiction becoming a polemic? When it is so clear, like a lot of times when you're, as you're writing a story, okay, well, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. This is the way it's going to be. Because, or if you have a message that is so vital to you that you really want to make sure you communicate, how do you manage to keep your writing from being too aggressively messagey? Or do you?
I write an essay. It's funny. I always tell my students a couple things. I always say, I say, who are you writing for? And these are undergraduates, and they kind of look at me, and I'm like, you're not writing for me. I go, I got plenty to read. I don't need to read your work. You got to write something that you believe in, that you want to say. So, and that's part of it. And then we always go back to this character's plot and plot is character. And I think my job is to entertain and be clear. And way down here, I can inform. And that's simple to say, but I mean, I want to kind of entertain myself in a sense, and I want the characters to, by the very nature of me being specific, it becomes a message is told, right? So the details I put in there immediately are going to communicate that. I don't need to say anything else. If I do, then my job's too wrong. And since I read a lot of, if you're out there undergraduates, I love you, a very, plain spoken, like, this is how I feel storytelling. I see it all the time. And I say, instead of saying the kid's sorry his dad died, put him in a Vietnam jacket and send him to high school. It's the same thing. And that's what they need to do. So it's told through the detail, and it takes the pressure off me. So I think that's one way I check myself, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Great advice.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to that too. I usually don't start with the, that frustrate or the concept of what I want to say. It's more like you said, Jotham, like it starts with a character and who has this particular experience in life. I do think that there's a couple of stories in my newer collection that are a little more didactic because I was very angry when I wrote them.
It's very hard not to be angry these days. Like, it's kind of ubiquitous.
But that was freeing too, to just say, you know what, I'm doing the character thing. I am entertaining myself by not allowing myself to go completely, nuts with what's happening out there and directing myself in here. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you want to entertain, and you want things to come from character. But I think sometimes it's okay also to let your work be fueled by what really is frustrating and feels completely unfair and unjust. Yeah.
You guys, I don't mean to cut you off, but because it's getting late, we do have someone who wrote in a question for you guys. Lara H asks, she would love to hear about everyone's approach to revising a manuscript once you have a draft. Thank you, Lara.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I just wrote a short story last week.
Yay.
Sarah,
Yay.
I loved how you described short stories or novels as sort of like a short story that doesn't behave. I haven't had a short story behave in a long time, and the story just like plopped out, and I was like, how satisfying was that? And so then I was looking to revise it. I was rereading it, and I thought, God, revising a short story is so great. You can hold the whole thing in your head at once. Yeah. But it was like a microcosm of how you do it with a novel. But I'm very old school. Like, I have to print it out. I have to spread it all out. Like all the old tricks that I feel like everyone does. Read it out loud. So many things are revealed when you read it out loud. I also think like sometimes the key that nobody really wants to hear, but I actually think it makes me feel much better to think about this actually, is just that sometimes like the most important ingredient is time. Like you just have to let it sit and then find a way to look at it. So find a way to see it as if someone else wrote it, whether that's just having enough time pass, putting it in a different typeface than you usually write in.
That's a clever one.
You know,
Yeah.
when I see
I
something
haven't heard that
Latin
one
Garamond,
before.
I'm like, what the hell is this?
Nice.
What's this story? In, like, if it's still
Oh,
good in
Comic
Arial,
Sans. There
it's
was a
good.
reason
Exactly.
for you.
If it's good in Comic Sans, it is good. And yeah, the actual teachers here probably have good advice, but I feel like those are like the classics.
That's great advice.
Yeah, those are good.
Thank
Yeah.
So much
I try
easier
to, I do
story.
things too. I find myself, sometimes I tinker, you know, with things, and I want to be open to surprise. So I use my journal, or I use my, you know, Word document to just kind of say, okay, I need to pry this open and have no constraints on where to even go in the story. I'm just going to write a new scene, and I know it's going to edit down. So I need to give my permission to be surprised. And sometimes I'll read my stuff aloud, and it's like, well, that's just obvious. Like, what's the surprise? So I do a lot of writing off the page. I think in my revision, where you're walking the dog, you're taking a shower, you're just thinking about it, very actively thinking about it. And then I'll just write new scenes and then try to just sculpt them into the work. I find if I'm tinkering in the margins, sometimes I'm just changing words. I'm not doing what needs to be done to make it surprising for me as a writer. So I think that's one maybe small tip. But reading aloud is great. I like to do with my students when working on novels. Take a paperback of a book you like and just cut it into pieces and just lay all the novels out of it's really study models really well of books you like. And cutting a book into pieces and lay it on the table, like chapter 1, chapter 2. Like, how did they do it, right? Like, figure out how they do it when you get frustrated. And even I get frustrated. You know, you think you have experience, and then you're like, shit, I don't know what I am doing. And I go and I say, I need to read more of this book, and then it helps me kind of get in a zone to my revision. Yeah.
I love that. I want to do that.
I do not want to cut up.
So violent.
I can't.
Well, you get it. It's a book maybe water
Stay away
damage.
from my books.
Yeah, it's like the copy that you found of your favorite book in a little free library that has the bad cover.
I'm not throwing
like,
it away, Em. I'm just going to use it in a different way.
Right. You have another.
Sarah, do you have any last words? I have.
So I think I used to do all the things, Amy, that you were saying, and I think those worked so well for me. I think what I've collapsed all of my revision though into the writing process, which is not necessarily helpful to people. I mean, at least for short stories, I tend to like really revise it as I go. So now by the time, and because I feel comfortable with the short story format, at a certain point when I'm writing, I know what the end is going to be. And then when I get to the end, it's mostly done. I mean, I know, so I'll let it sit still, and then I'll go back and read it over. So I don't do huge revisions with the stories anymore, because I feel like I've been doing it all along the way. But with the novel draft, I feel like I have to reinvent that. So I printed it out again. Yeah. And now I'm having my husband read it. It's taking him forever. But he's
your husband. Yeah,
not Schaff.
Yeah. He's a professor too, so he's also grading. But yeah, so that I'm hoping that like just having someone else see it will be helpful, because I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Send it out to an agent that you don't want to get. The minute that it is out, you're going to be like, oh my God, if only I had changed this. Like, I cannot believe that I sent it looking like that. And like all these things are going to pop out. But we have two people that are asking the same question. They want to know if you've written any nonfiction or memoir. Do you have any advice for nonfiction writers?
I don't know. I have written, I write a lot of essays, which I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'd ever written an essay. Oh, you know what? I was going to say, before my first book came out and my publishers were like, you should write essays. You know, when you have a novel out, then your publishers always want you to write essays.
Yeah, what's that?
And you're like, I don't write essays. I don't know what you're talking about. I write novels.
Like, hi, I'm a novelist. Please write me an essay.
And you're like, what? Although I did write an essay in graduate school that Jotham, my friend and yours, Amanda Fields, a great writer and reader and professor, read this essay, and she said, this is a novel. And I was like, how dare you? And she was right. It ended up being my second novel. She was totally right. But I have ended up writing, and then since then I've gotten more comfortable with writing essays, and I've written a lot of essays, and I just published a personal essay in the New York Times, which if you've ever published there wow, a lot of people read that thing, and you get a lot of response.
Modern Love, right? Wasn't it in Modern Love?
It was Modern Love, yeah, which is
Oh,
like
yeah.
a very unsettling
Congratulations.
experience.
Very
I was like,
popular.
excuse
everybody
me,
that I know.
people, this is personal. Don't talk to me about this personal thing I just told you about. It's private.
In this large circulation,
Please.
international market.
Please read it. Share it with your friends. Do not talk to me about it. Thank you.
Amy, that's really interesting because you're saying, in a sense, part of the advice is you have to be prepared to be honest and put yourself out there in a way that if you're not comfortable, then you maybe shouldn't write it. You know,
I mean, I always think if you're not comfortable with, then it's probably really good, and it probably is the thing you should write about. It's just uncomfortable on the other end.
Make sure that you have a number of a good therapist.
It's uncomfortable if people read things. It's uncomfortable if they don't. You're just going to be uncomfortable. It's just, if you were like a normal person, then you wouldn't have to write. And I guess you could be comfortable, but at this point, we're all past that. I don't know if I really have advice, though, except that when I was working on this Modern Love with Dan Jones, who's the editor of that column, he said something that I was like, right, I have to remember this if I continue to write personal essays, which is, he said, we write about our lives. You have this little chapter of something that happened, and it becomes a story. You're allowed to write about your life. That's your experience of the world. Other people are involved because other people are involved with your life. You treat every character like in a work of fiction with love as much as you can. But it's your story to tell, and you do that, and you just sometimes have to remind yourself of that. But I've actually been reading a lot of nonfiction memoir about parenting writers recently, and it just reminds me.
Genre. We started it,
right?
Like
the Deborah Levy trilogy, and I'm just reminded whenever I read those books or essays that mean so much to me, and I feel like validate my experience and help me exist in the world. It makes me remember that there is so much value to telling our stories, because even if it's sometimes a little personally uncomfortable, it helps readers. I'm helped by writers who do that. So in conclusion, I have been writing some personal essays, and I don't think I have any advice, but please keep writing them because I want to read them.
There it is. I cannot believe how far over we are over our hour. So unless anybody has any, actually, everybody say one short piece of advice to people who are writing with their kids. What should they do?
That's great.
Whatever it is, go.
Get
Sara.
cable.
Okay.
Awesome. Love it, Jordan. That's awesome.
I would say find a way to prioritize some time for your writing, even if it is just the 15 minutes. I mean, you will get that work done, but it's cool also for your kids to see you doing something that you love. My daughter loves to write her own stories now on her computer, and I'm not allowed to bother her while she's doing it.
I think that's amazing. It works for the mom. It works for the kids. Yes.
I just think when I have 3 boys, and it's part of our community, the culture of the family. Like, it's not that they have to write, but I take them to events occasionally. They're bored, but they understand. I throw the Connecticut Literary Festival. They were there for 9 hours, and I know part of it. And then my son wrote these. He's 11. He wrote these linked poems in this little space we have, and then he read them at dinner on Sunday night. So I just exposing them to a community is really important in our family, and it's been effective. And then they understand what I do, and I think that's and I understand what they do sometimes.
That's great. Amy, got a last word?
Yeah, I think that that community bit is so important, which is something that Pen Parentis is so great for. But I don't know. I think that you can, whether you're a writer or not, when you have children, especially small children, it just is like life-saving and brain-saving to have a community and have other people who get what you're trying to do, who can support you, who know what you're going through. And like, I feel like connecting with other parent writers just helps you really stay sane. And also just remembering that like everything passes, like when you're in the craziest kid stage, like it passes. It
Oh,
will.
yeah.
This too shall pass.
Well, Christina Chiu and I would like to thank you all for coming. It was
Thank you
amazing.
so much.
Everybody
Thank
in the
you.
audience, I want to thank you guys for coming. And anybody who's watching this on the replay, I am telling you from the past, we are so happy that you are watching in the future.
Wow, that's good.
I want anybody to know that we do have title membership, which is a subscription in which you get to do accountability groups. You can find everything you need at penparentis.org. We would love to have you if you are a writer who is a parent at any level. And other than that, congratulations again to Kelly Clark for winning our fellowship. Yay! And make sure you visit our website and see the rest of that amazing essay by Dawn. And that's it. We will see you guys all next week or next month on the second Tuesday of the month. It'll be December, and we will have 4. Do we have 4 in December?
No, 3.
Wow.
3 fabulous writers, authors who are parents who you will be amazed by. They will be amazing. All right, go away, go eat your dinners. We are so happy that you watched us. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.